The German Aviation Authority says Lufthansa acted correctly when it gave Andreas Lubitz his pilot's licence. Lubitz went on to crash, obviously, as you know, the Germanwings plane, the A320, into a French mountainside, killed all on board. Lufthansa's chief executive, Carsten Spohr, held top-level meetings with the authorities this week. The Aviation Authority says it had no prior knowledge of Lubitz's earlier episodes of depression. Gerard Falling QC is with me. He's a lawyer specialising in corporate liability after these catastrophic events. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you very much, Richard, for having me on.
In this situation, one of the most egregious facts of compensation is the differences between, say, the 3 US passengers, what they will get, and some from other parts of the world. The law was the Montreal Convention was supposed to change all that.
In a way, it was, and I completely agree with you, depending on where you actually make this claim. There can be, as you know, Richard, massive disparity between these various claims. In general, for example, the 3 passengers who will try potentially to get this matter into the American courts, they will, if successful in front of a jury, get huge damages. For those that won't be able to get into America, particularly in Germany, the UK, Netherlands, where there is no what they call moral damages, that you can't only get the money in terms of economic loss rather than the bereavement and suffering.
Is that fair?
Well, partly it's not for me. I'm just a humble lawyer, but it's for others to say whether it's fair. Personally, there was a deal done on this convention. This convention was to try and get away from some of the risk of litigation, so everyone knew where they were. But in the south of Europe, for example, Richard, Italy, where some of them come from, Spain, and my thoughts go out to the families, and France, they can get some sort of moral damages to try and make up for the fact that their loved ones have died a tragic death.
You talk about this idea of 2 people in the cockpit,
yes,
not being the nirvana, not being the answer.
Yes.
But, you know, some suggest, of course, if there had been 2 in the cockpit, this might not have happened. We'll never know.
We'll never know, but for example, in Egypt Air, where we do know that the pilot was able to get in quite quickly, but there was still the accident that happened. And the other issue about this, it depends who you put in the cockpit, Richard. For example, it doesn't take much for a pilot to decompress the plane, to put the plane into a roll, to attack someone with a fire axe. Unless you have some sort of major kung fu fighter,
right,
it's going to be very difficult, depending on who that person is. I don't think it is the nirvana that everyone thinks.
Now,
it may have helped.
We've got liability under the Montreal Convention up to, I think, 150,000, 100,000 special drawing rights or whatever.
113 drawing rights.
Right. We've got liability there. Lufthansa, to avoid any more liability, Lufthansa needs to prove it wasn't at fault or negligent,
yes,
or somebody else was at fault.
That's
Their
correct.
Employee was at fault.
That's correct.
But he was acting so out of the scope of employment. Will that give them a defence?
Well, I don't know whether they'll choose to take that defence, but of course, under the Montreal Protocol, as part of this deal, the actions, vicarious actions of your employees, you cannot use in technical terms to waive your rights under this convention. Having said that, if someone goes so much on a frolic of their own, there is definitely some case law to say that we may need to explore that.
Ultimately, Allianz, I believe, is the insurer here. Ultimately, Allianz is going to pick up the bill. It won't really be a Lufthansa argument. It'll be an insurance company argument.
And the lawyers.
And the lawyers. Do you expect them to fight this hard?
So far, from what I've been able to see, it looks to me that they seem to be taking a very proper line. I don't see any evidence that they are trying to use their Article 21 right defence, but I don't know. I'm not their advisor and I'm not Lufthansa. But it does raise one other issue. What do we want to do about mental health issues? We're all told, Richard, that many of us have them some of the time. And one of the big issues is, and I really hope that we look at this very seriously, we do not want to drive these issues underground. Right. And if doctors have to give a notice, then will people go to doctors and will they take the prescription drugs that they should be taking?
Issues which will be raised in the future. Thank you, sir, for joining us. This is CNN, Westminster Business. We're back after a break.